Welcome everybody to Saturday mornings live with David Clouter, A to Z Property Strategies, and as you can tell from our shirts, short sleeves, we're on our desert island. We swam there last week if you missed part 13, but we're now on the desert island, safe.
We've got our drinks,
enjoying
we're
the
good to
sun. It's beaten down on us. Fantastic. Welcome, David. How are you finding the heat?
It's terrific. What a nice, relaxing place it is. And this is just down the road from Necker Island, so we can swim across and see Sir Richard.
It absolutely is. And I'm just waiting for the waiter to come into shop with the pina coladas for us, but that might come just after we finish this. So where are we up to? We were doing Fs last time, weren't we?
That's right. And the one we've got next on the agenda is forced appreciation.
Ooh, sounds very posh. Tell me some more, please.
It is. It's not getting people to line up at gunpoint and applaud our shows, although I'd love if they did that. This is another strategy altogether, and a very good one, a very, very useful one in the property world, whereby we work on our properties and we do something to them. We make some input, shall we say, because natural appreciation. Let's rewind a bit. Natural appreciation is just the market slowly rising over time. So forced appreciation is effectively when we do a little something to help it. And so there are a lot of things that we can do in order to achieve that.
Okay. So what sort of things would you do to force appreciation, David?
One key thing
audience.
Is to provide more living space. You might be able to use permitted development rights to stick something on the back of the house. You might just, as I think I described in a previous video, create an extra bedroom just by partitioning in half the big room upstairs, which is possible if there are enough windows and it's not conservation area or whatever. So that's always been a favourite of mine. In terms of if you're looking for a sort of commercial valuation, raising the monthly rent is a way to get some forced appreciation, as indeed is extending the term of the loan so that the monthly loan payments that you're making go down, which in terms of valuing a commercial property is going to make a difference to that sort of valuation, as would be minimizing vacancy rates. So there are things we can do like that. If we've got just a straightforward vanilla buy-to-let thing, you might want to add an extra bathroom. You might want to add an attic. You might, if you're in a very posh area, and I'm not in that posh an area, add a basement. But you've got to run the numbers very carefully. You've got to make sure that the spend that you put into this property is matched. And I like to say, for every pound I put in, I need to increase the value by £2. How to find that out? By looking at comparably sold properties and looking at how many bedrooms they've got and what facilities and things they've got. And in that way, by comparing them to the one you've got, you'll see what sort of a lift you're going to get from what sort of work you do.
Superb. So conservatories and that sort of stuff would all add value and make it more forced appreciation. Brilliant. I love that strategy, and it's a very active strategy. Does it work in all property cycles, David?
That's a very good question. To a degree, in that it'll always be worth more than it was, but if the market is falling steeply enough, it might be a sort of money pit. But on the other hand, in a free fall market, the trades and all these people are going to be available, and the price of the refurbishment materials is going to be low. So if you're taking a long-term view, you might want to do it, but you certainly wouldn't want to do forced appreciation apropos flipping in a falling market if your outcome was to sell.
No, great answer. I would agree with you and endorse what you've just said there. So do we have any more Fs? Because that was a good one. That was.
That's a particular favourite of mine. I've done that one a lot. Well, this is one you might know a bit more than I do. But I know there was Well, there are two things. Forestry is the investment strategy we're talking about here, and the one is that there are grants available for having forests in Scotland or whatever, and that can be an investment and you can get a reasonable rate of return. And I also heard recently, which was probably a loophole, which may have been closed by now. The last time I checked, it hadn't been challenged, which was to bundle your expensive mansion in Chelsea or something with a forest in Nottinghamshire or somewhere, and do this as a single transaction, which was a kind of loophole and sailing a bit close to the edge. But that was the two strategies that I knew there, apropos the old forestry thing.
I've not heard of that one before. Bundling a mansion in Chelsea with a forest in Nottingham.
Yes, to make it into one transaction.
It almost sounds like the sheriff is out to get us from Nottingham.
Well, indeed. It's probably something that Robin Hood would do, but it's not one that we're sort of endorsing here. I just heard of a few instances of this as a way of mitigating higher stamp duty rates. I would imagine if everybody did it, that HMRC would crack down. If it was just one or two, they might let it go. I don't know what the current state of play was, but this was a couple of years ago I heard that one.
Yeah, no, I've not come across that one. I'm going to do a bit of Googling after this and do a bit of research and ask my good friend David Hanna from CTA Tax to see if he can help as well. Little plug for you there, David. Hope you appreciate it. So, forestry is another interesting one, yes. It's quite restrictive. It gives a fixed low rate of return. You can't buy it with the speculation that you're going to build on it, because if you do, you lose any of the grants and any of the stuff. But it does give a steady and consistent rate of return, about as fast as trees grow.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it.
A bit like these palm ones, but they tend to be pine.
So the next one is very much more tangible and down to earth and something that we can go out and do tomorrow, and that is owning freeholds. Freeholds very often come up for sale at auction, don't they? And what you're doing is we're looking at the yields. And it's important to stress that as the freeholder, you are right at the front of the queue. You're at the top of the pecking order in respect of that property. You are ahead of the mortgage lender, the first charge holder, and so that if those folks don't pay their ground rent, then you can repossess. Now, obviously, in the event of that, the mortgage holder would just cough up. But it's a kind of pretty steady thing. It's unlikely that the law will get substantially changed, I think, in that respect. Obviously, if you're the freeholder of a block of flats, and if the majority of the tenants decide that they want to buy that freehold, then you're legally obliged to do so. So changes have occurred to this over time. But in most cases, again, you don't regard it as a kind of cash flow. There were developers who were doing freeholds of houses that they were doing recently, and that was very much frowned upon, because then if you wanted to put a little conservatory at the back or something, and then they were selling it on, so that was kind of a bit naughty. I'm thinking more of freeholds in the more traditional sense, where these are possibly houses that have been converted into flats or small blocks of flats or this kind of thing, and you buy them for a fixed return. And the place that I've seen them most often, I don't know about you, Andrew, is in property auctions.
Yeah, well, I recently saw quite a number of little lots coming up, but they weren't actually properties. You might have seen things on the side of streets, billboards, and they were little triangles of land. And what they were doing was selling the freeholds of those little triangles of land with the billboard on it. So you've effectively got different companies, Clearview and others do exist, out there renting that billboard off you. So you've got some cracking commercial tenants.
Yes, I mean, sometimes, for example, it might be a pylon owned by the electricity company, for instance, and the payback time on them is usually just a couple of years.
As well. Mobile phone masts.
Oh yes, that kind of thing. What I was thinking of exactly is big metallic towers, and probably in this 21st century, it's more likely to be a mobile phone mast, isn't it? Yeah, but I've seen these sites with things on them, but I never really sort of paused to see what the things were. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Mobile phone masts would be even more to the point and modern day.
Absolutely. I tell you what, David, it's a bit warm out here, isn't it?
It is indeed. It is indeed. It's kind of
hurry up.
Sweltering.
We've been talking 10 minutes and no pina colada. That waiter's a bit slow today.
Well, all I've got, this is just water, believe it or not. So that's all that's keeping me going.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, it's
so warm.
Sweltering.
So where are we up to now?
The
Now that
first
we've done
G,
freeholders.
I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day who's a very experienced property guy, and he didn't know what this was, but of course you will. And I was a bit shocked. Gantt charts.
Oh yeah. No, I
They're
love a good Gantt chart.
absolutely fantastic tool. And basically, you can do these on like Excel, and other spreadsheets are available. Whereby now this is flipped around, I think, so it's probably down that side that the axis is. So up and down here you have a list of tasks. For example, suppose you're doing. It doesn't even have to be a new build. Suppose you're doing a renovation. Well, the strip out team comes first, and then first fix, and then second fix, and da da da. And these things need to be done in a particular order, so that, for example, the electrician has to do his first fix of putting all the cables, tacking them all to the wall and everything, before the plasterer comes and skim finishes it all. This kind of thing. So all these tasks have to be arranged in time order. And then along the axes you see the tasks, and you can also set up the interdependencies, so that if the electrician is delayed for some reason, it knocks back the plasterers, and it flags up that you have to tell them. But this is in the wider world of project management that they're used extensively, but bringing them to bear on our property projects is very, very, very helpful, because otherwise you're having to juggle all these balls up in the air, and you can get into all of a tiz if you're elderly and easily confused like me. But Gantt charts help you focus, and they help you to manage a project overall.
Well, they're a brilliant tool, and I do use them. And the reason I use them is on the Gantt chart, you've got the timeline across the bottom, you've got the task down the side. And if you need to complete a project in 60 days, it enables you to see which tasks you can actually overlap. So although you can't do the plastering until the wiring's been done, what you can do is you can move on with other areas, like first fix plumbing can be happening at the same time as first fix wiring, and dovetail to compress your timescale down. And the Gantt chart helps you visually see where you can overlap things.
Absolutely.
And it's a great tool.
It's useful, for example, in refurbs, I'll get those kitchens and bathrooms skimmed and everything first, and then the plasterers can move on to other rooms while the specialist guys come in there and install the kitchen units and the shower. So it's nice to be able to visualise that kind of thing, because otherwise it's a lot of things, especially if you've got lots of refurbs on the go at the same time, and you've got teams that you're deploying from one to another. It's just quite a good way to manage the resources in respect of time, because time, as we know, is money.
Totally. Brilliant. So where do we go from Gantt charts? Because Gantt chart isn't an F, that's a G, isn't it?
We have made that big transition into the scary world of the letter G. That we've still got to get from G to Z, so that there's a fair few that we've still got in the thing. We've got 3 now, which will, bit of luck, we'll have time to fit these in before we time out today, and they're all about garages. And the first one is garage conversions.
Yeah.
Now, they're a wonderful thing to do, really, because in many properties nowadays, the car stays in the forecourt, or you've got on-street parking and this kind of thing. So you've got all this space in the house that is probably better employed. There are probably better uses than, although maybe not for me, than having a workbench and the Black and Decker drill and all that kind of thing. But this is space enough maybe for an extra room or something like this, and very often these garages, well, they could be separate from the building, a different part of the garden and that kind of thing. You might want to convert them into a sort of workshop stroke office. They might be integral to the house, in which case they can become a utility room, or maybe even a small bedroom, or something like this, and the works required are minimal. Some people leave the garage door on if it's an area where that is kind of desirable, and just work behind it. It's not a biggie, because the brickwork and everything is already there. So all you've got to do is skim the walls, add the electrics, put in plumbing if necessary, and this kind of thing. So it's almost a room that's half finished for you, if you like.
Yeah, no, well, garage conversions are an easy, low-cost thing to do. Bit of building control to get involved, planning, but you can generally do them under permitted development. I converted a garage into a very large feature kitchen. You can see that on one of my websites. Very nice. It was 15 metres long by 6 metres wide. But the point I would make about a lot of garages and a lot of cars don't tend to go in the garages these days. Why don't they go in the garage? Well, if you've got an SUV, a sports utility vehicle, they tend to be one of them big chunky Range Rovery things. And garages are not wide enough to open the doors once you're in. So you have to climb out the rear boot hatch. So people are not putting their cars in garages. And £1 per square foot, you're not having to do anything structural here. It's very quick and it's very easy to convert something that an estate agent would value at probably £2-3 a square foot on your property and uplift it to £40-50 a square foot in areas outside of London. If it's inside London, you've got a garage. I'm surprised it's not already been converted, but you'll probably uplift it to a couple of £100 a square foot very quickly.
Yes, absolutely so. And as we were saying the other day about adding extra bedrooms, this is the properties here in the UK, rather strangely, in my view, are not valued by their square meterage, which is quite a sensible metric, really, but by number of bedrooms. So a 4-bed house in Acacia Avenue is going to be worth more than a 3-bed house.
Absolutely.
And of course, if your property is an HMO, then that's rent as well. You're getting more rent out of that space, which as a garage would be minimal.
Yeah, well, I traded a HMO on to another investor which had a garage, and it was presented as this can be converted into an extra room because it was a 1.5 length garage, so it would be quite a large room. It was about 9 square meters, 10 square meters. So make a really good habitable space for somebody.
I saw a picture on Facebook the other day of a guy who was doing a conversion of a garage, and rather foolishly, he was doing it himself. You see, and I suspect it was just sort of lockdown madness because he had a big sledgehammer and he was breaking up the concrete floor of that garage. This is not recommended. There are ways to have suspended floors and this kind of thing, or you could tile straight onto the concrete. But why on earth he would break it up and go back to the brickwork was because there seemed to be plenty of head height. So. I think
madness.
I think, yeah, absolutely.
What you should be doing is putting your DPM on that, your damp-proof membrane. Put yourself some 100mm timbers in there. 100mm be 50mm. Insert Celotex, and then fold over and put paperboard on the top. You've got yourself a floating floor, effectively, that's waterproof, very quick, very easy to do. And you certainly don't break your back. And worse still, you don't fill 26 skips with concrete that goes into landfill.
Absolutely. I'm a massive fan of DPC. It's lovely stuff, actually. And it covers... the only thing it isn't really good for is Japanese knotweed, but we'll come to that when we get to J, which is further down the thing. Some other things you can do with your garage is you can rent it out. I've got a friend who's quite active in the property community in the sort of HMO arena. And when the HMO officer came round to inspect his property, this fella ended up renting the garage out to the HMO officer, which is very good sort of for politics and everything, because this guy was a collector of classic cars and needed places to put them.
Nice. That's a good tenant, I imagine, as well, a car. They're not going to moan about the cheese in the fridge in that HMO, are they, that car?
I think you're absolutely right there. And our final garage tip today, and we've got a mutual friend who's got lots of HMOs, and she uses some of the garages for her own storage purposes, so kind of furniture and bits and bobs and ladders and things that are going in between houses and so forth, because, there is a certain amount of apparatus that you need to move backwards and forwards, and so they use a couple of garages in some of the HMOs that are not otherwise used by the tenants.
I do the same myself on some of the properties which we have in our portfolio, where we actually use them not for storing surplus building materials that we've got that's finished on a site, and we keep it and use it on the next site. Recycling, saving skips, but also saving cost and increasing profitability of future projects. So we keep it in various garages across the Midlands that we've got, and it makes it local to where the job is as well.
One of the tips I do, which since we're mentioning kind of storing bits and pieces, is with paint I buy a lot with the same batch number, and then when there is a little scuff mark or something on the property, if it's a different batch number, it ain't going to match. But if it's the same batch number, we can assume and it disappears.
Yeah.
So the garage is a perfect place to keep it.
Just remember, paint will only keep for about 18 months, 2 years, and then it starts to turn. So don't buy too much, otherwise you could end up with it when you lift the lid and it goes a bit smelly.
Oh, we don't want that. We always store our paint tins upside down, don't we, anyway?
Yeah.
So
But yes,
smart one.
they don't have infinite storage. So but if you're doing kind of student accommodation, for example, where they move out every 8 or 9 months or something, you're good for a couple of changeovers.
Oh, absolutely. I do the same myself. It's
fabulous.
It's stock in trade, isn't it?
How is our stopwatch going? The big stopwatch and the.
Well, we've been going for 21 minutes, and I think that's a natural place to finish. I mean, I'm going to go and hustle up the waiter because where's my pina colada? I'm waiting for this. I'm hot here on this beach. Are you hot, David? You must have finished that glass of water as well.
I have, Andrew, so I'm really waiting for the waiter now. It'll be good if he's able to sort of join us and help us out there a bit.
Yeah, let me go hustle him up. I'll go and see if I can negotiate a couple of free ones for him taking 21 minutes now to get
Absolutely.
to us. This is not acceptable to me.
It's not. We're going to book into a different hotel if he won't do that. So this will escalate to the manager.
Yeah, well, we're going to go on our travels again this week. I think we're going to go back in time. And we've got a real surprise for you coming up next week when we go back in time. And I'm not talking 10, 20, 50 years. We're talking centuries. Decades and centuries. It's going to be good. So stay tuned. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell icon. And that will notify you when the next glorious episode of the A to Z of Property Strategies with David DJ Clouter is on.